Well, here we are. This is where the powerhouse of the West is truly defined. These teams are some of those dominant teams we think we will see going in the next season. A returning champion, a few teams that fell short but are ready to run things back, and even a team we think that's going to make a big jump and surprise a lot of fans this year. We've discussed the bottom 5 young teams, the middle of the pack 4 play-in teams, and now we get to the teams who we think will be running the West as the top 6. Before we get started, if you want to hit that like and maybe that subscribe button, it would help us out a ton, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get started with our 6th place contenders.
When we originally placed the Timberwolves here, we figured there would definitely be some people who questioned us putting them this high, or those who thought, wow, that's definitely biased because they are Wolves fans. But after some recent events and performances, I think some people will have changed their tune on the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves have plenty of talent and have had talent for multiple seasons now, but despite that, this team has struggled to be competitive. In fact, since Kevin Garnett first left the franchise, this team has never placed higher than the 7th seed. So what gives us the confidence to place them so high? Maybe it's better to frame it as who instead of what. Anthony Edwards is a bona fide star, and whether you want to believe it or not, he will soon be one of the faces of the league, and he will be competing for MVPs as soon as his upcoming season. And as a Wolves fan, it has been forever since a player from Minnesota has garnered this much national hype and praise, and it is certainly deserved. Last season, he averaged 24.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists a game. And given he has improved every year so far, we can assume he will continue that path and really take over as the number 1 option on a team that has a ton of talent. For those still questioning his love for the game, let's talk about these recent events that I talked about earlier. This man just took over an Olympic basketball game and put up 34 points and carried the team back from a 16-point deficit. This is supposedly a team made up of the best players in the USA, and they all look to Ant-Man to help them win. That tells me that Edwards really has that alpha dog in him, and we will see that soon this next season. He is already one of the best finishers in the entire NBA, and he has a plethora of highlight reel dunks to prove it. On top of that, he is a very good shooter and an elite defender, as he sneakily averages over a steal and a half per game, and he also almost averages a block, which is pretty unique for a shooting guard. The only real knocks against his game right now is he sometimes has poor shot selection, but he does make a lot of those bad shots. And he also has been disappointing in the assist game, at least to me. As a 2-guard, putting up around 5 assists is usually pretty good, but on a team with Cat, Gobert, McDaniels, Naz Reid, and other players, I'd really like to see him push those assist numbers up. I especially want to see him throw a ton of more lobs to Gobert. Edwards' finishing threat should make him and Gobert's pick and rolls almost unstoppable. As I already mentioned, the Wolves have the frontcourt duo of Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, who are both some of the best big men in the entire league. But a lot of fans are already calling this pairing a failure and demanding the trade of one or both of them. And I hate to disappoint those fans, I don't actually, but that is simply not happening. Cat is one of the best shooters in the entire league and pairs wonderfully with Anthony Edwards, especially if he takes a step back and accepts his number 2 role this season. Cat is essentially a 25-10 guy when healthy, and he has had semi-decent track record of staying on the court, as he has played 70 plus games in 5 of his 8 NBA seasons, and if he plays the way I predict he will, he'll easily reach that mark again. He is easily the best spot-up shooter on this team, and as I said earlier, Edwards will really take over as the head of the table, and I think Cat will mature enough to fully realize that this year and become more of an off-ball threat that spaces the floor with a plus 40% 3-point percentage. But he'll also be a threat to take over and drop 40 points if he needs to. I mean, this guy scored 60 points in a game like 2 years ago. He has been disrespected for a while now, and I think he will prove a lot of people wrong this year, as he will be a key piece in this run to the 6th seed, and what I think will also be a deep run in the playoffs. However, Cat isn't without his flaws, as he struggles with his emotions and complains to the refs, and a longtime problem of his has been his defense, which led the Wolves to trade for the aforementioned Rudy Gobert. There has been some recent discourse about Gobert, discussing if his career is already Hall of Fame worthy, but I'm sure lots of people have their own opinion on that, so feel free to debate it in the comments. But despite any feelings about Gobert, it is hard to ignore his defensive prowess, and that is exactly why the Timberwolves sold the farm in order to obtain him. Individually, his first season with the Wolves was not that bad by any stretch, as he averaged 13 points per game and 12 rebounds, and he provided the rim defense he was supposed to, as he averaged over a block and a half a game. Lots of people, however, said he fell off in the defensive category, but those folks simply don't know ball. The reason Rudy Gobert's blocks per game were down or people thought he played worse defensively was just the fact the defense of the Timberwolves was already better. When he was with the Jazz, Gobert had to play a lot of the defensive role there, and his guards let him down by letting people get rim runs open and attacking him, so he had to get those blocks. The Timberwolves have a much better defensive wing like Anthony Edwards and McDaniels who can help Gobert, and that's why his blocks per game are down. However, Gobert is exactly what people thought he would be in the negative sense as well. He failed to score consistently, and he struggles to catch the ball a lot of the times. He also does clog the paint to an extent on offense. However, now that he has been reunited with Mike Conley, I think a full season of them together could definitely help him provide more offense and be a little less of a liability. Now it's time to see if the Gobert developing a three-point part of the offseason will finally come true. I've already talked about the Timberwolves a ton, and I haven't even mentioned that they have one of the best defenders in the entire league, and my personal pick for next season Defensive Player of the Year, book it, in Jaden McDaniels. And they also have one of the best bench players, scratch that, give me some of the Timberwolves Kool-Aid, the best bench player in the entire league in Naz Reid. So let's discuss those two real quickly. Jaden is legit, and he really started to pick up some national attention last season as he obtained an A or higher in all of his defensive ratings, and he regularly guarded the 1 through 5 in games. He's also guarding the opposing team's best player every night and performed very well, as he held the likes of LeBron James to 30%, Lillard to 40%, Halliburton to 27%, and Donovan Mitchell to 16%. And on top of being the best defender, which on a team with Gobert and Edwards is insane, he also scores 12 points per game and shoots nearly 40% from 3. He's a fringe fourth option guy. Him being hurt definitely cost the Timberwolves a chance in the playoffs, and the same can be said for the other player I briefly mentioned, Naz Reid. Naz Reid is an incredibly hard worker and an absolute spark plug off the bench. I think him coming off the bench is the best thing for him, and this re-signing was absolutely huge for the Timberwolves. Coming off the bench last season, he put up 11 points per game along with 5 rebounds, and the Wolves head coach Chris Finch really found a good thing with him towards the end of the year where he was coming in and out for one of their bigs during the game, and that was really switching up the looks that defenses would see from the Wolves. Reid can shoot well from deep, which really helps, but he got the nickname Big Jelly for a reason. He is, for my money, one of the smoothest big man finishers in the entire league, if not the smoothest. His ability to shoot really opens up the lane for him to attack and show off his hops and his finishing ability, so it'll be interesting to see how he is used this year. I can only imagine him playing better and helping this team out a ton. Ultimately, one of the Wolves' biggest problems is coaching. They have a ton of talent, but so far, Chris Finch has been pretty inept at coaching it. It is tough to completely bury him yet since Cat only played 29 games last season, and like we talked about earlier, both McDaniels and Reid got hurt just before the playoffs, so that didn't help either. But still, the coaching criticisms are legit, and this will probably be a make or break year for him. Talent alone can probably get them to the 6th spot, but it'll come down to Finch and his coaching ability if they want to win a championship.
It feels like just yesterday we were watching the Warriors and Cavs going at it in the NBA Finals. It's been 5 years since that last happened, and in the time span, the Warriors won their 4th championship 2 seasons ago in the 21-22 season. A lot of fans thought the Warriors would have it in them again to make a run at another championship this last season, but LeBron spoiled their efforts in the second round of the playoffs after the Warriors took the Kings to Game 7. The Warriors didn't look like the team that won the championship the year prior, and after the looks of the last season, we don't think we can place them too high in the standings due to the star players not playing enough games. Steph Curry, the best shooter of all time and debatably the best point guard of all time, only played in 56 games in the regular season. And in this season, his averages came out to 29.4 points and 6.3 assists with 6 rebounds while shooting his constant 42% from 3. Curry has been the heart and soul of this team for about a decade now, and after many believed that he would slow down and probably not win any more championships after Kevin Durant left and they lost to the Raptors in 2018-2019 season. But he proved all the haters wrong just a few years later. And now, like we keep saying when we make this list, that when we rank these teams, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are worse than the teams above them, as everyone has seen what Steph Curry is capable of, and we know that he's not one to mess around with come playoffs. But we were just looking at why this team may finish in the 5th spot. So like we mentioned, with Curry's missing games, it happened with 2 other the more important players on this roster, and that being Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. Klay only missed 13 games last season, and he put up very solid scoring numbers for the Warriors, so we can cut him some slack as he put up about 22 points, 2.5 assists, and about 4 rebounds, with his respective 41% from 3. But one of the biggest losses during the last season was Andrew Wiggins, only playing in 37 regular season games, suffering with some personal issues. Wiggins, who was a big part in the Warriors championship season, was missing a big amount of time, leaving some games to just Clay, Draymond Green, and recent trade piece Jordan Poole to try and win games to keep this team in the playoff picture. And speaking of Jordan Poole, let's talk about this trade. The Warriors traded Poole to the Wizards to pick up Chris Paul after he was in the package for Bradley Beal for the Suns. Now, Chris Paul is as well not what he once used to be, but he's still a solid guard and still remains to see what is going to happen with their lineup. I think more than likely that Chris Paul will be the sixth man off the bench, and unless Steph Curry is hurt, it would maybe be the only time you see him as a starter. Paul is now 38 years old and is appearing to slow down a little bit. Since he joined the Suns, his points per game has slowly decreased from 16.5 to just under 14 points per game. But as the smart, true point guard he's always been, he still facilitates and passes the ball very well, averaging 9.5 assists, keeping up with his career average. And just because he's not scoring as much doesn't mean he's a worse player. He was on a team where the scoring was taken care of, and he would score where he need be, but facilitate the way he was meant to for the Suns. So Paul, coming off the bench, isn't too bad of a piece for the Warriors, although I believe they could have waited on pulling the trigger to trade for him with Jordan Poole, as I really didn't see the Wizards keeping him and more than likely buying him out in pursuit of their rebuild, but the Warriors wanted more veteran experience, so they went and got that, and I believe the Paul will help this team no matter what role they put him in. The Warriors also lost a few players during the offseason, one of them being Dante DiVincenzo, who's a very solid sharpshooting backup point guard. He averaged 9.4 points per game while shooting just under 40% from 3 on the year. You could say Chris Paul will be an upgrade in the scoring and assist department, but he's definitely notable as to what the team lost. To round out the more important pieces of this roster, Kevon Looney seems like the perfect fit for this Warriors team. Someone who likes to get down low and grab boards and be aggressive in getting his team second chance points. He averaged 15 rebounds a game in the series against Sacramento and almost 11 boards against the Lakers, averaging just around about to be 13 in the playoffs. We also may see some more development out of Jonathan Kuminga, who averaged just under 10 points in about 20 minutes of action in 67 games. He didn't do too much for the Warriors in the postseason, but he's still young, and I think there's a lot of room for this kid to grow. He's only 20 years old. And one more name to mention is Gary Payton II. He's a good role guy who will score a bit, but play good on-ball defense and get you a steal per game. So the Warriors don't appear to be much better in terms of the roster, but one thing you can't do is count Steph Curry out. And when this Warriors team is fully healthy, we know what they're capable of, as the same core of 3 guys has won 4 championships together. But the Warriors have guys who are competitive, and most of the time their injuries aren't anything to do with load management, and I don't believe they've been a team to coast through the regular season. So they're going to fight for the win every night, but with some of the other teams being more healthy and maybe better put together, we may see the Warriors claiming the 5th spot in this list.
The Thunder have pulled off one of the fastest and most efficient rebuilds I have ever seen. After multiple disappointing first-round exits, they traded away Paul George and Chris Paul, which gave them a boatload of picks and some very talented players. And with those pieces, they managed to make the play-in last year and now have a lot of people, including us, buying in. The reason we have them so high is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was the centerpiece of that monumental trade all those years ago and is coming off an MVP caliber season where he averaged 30.5 points, 5.5 assists, and 4.5 rebounds. He also added a steal and a half and a block a game. At just 24 years old, he's one of the best guards in the entire league and a catalyst for any and all success Oklahoma will have in the years to come. The stats hint at this, but Shai can really do anything. He can shoot well, attack the rim, and make plays for his teammates. And on top of all that, it's very hard to find a weakness in his game. Ultimately, you can just say you hope he adds more assists to his game, but that's not really a weakness. The Thunder also have a 2nd overall pick that kind of is going under the radar in Chet Holmgren. There's all this hype about Wembanyama, but Chet measures at 7'1" and will probably be one of the league's best shot blockers, while also providing the Thunder with some much needed size and defense. But he's not only a defender. He also shot 39% from 3 in college and averaged 14 points per game. The Minnesota native definitely has a good shot at winning Rookie of the Year, especially since he had the whole year to work with the NBA staff and see how the season feels before even starting his rookie campaign. Another draft pick the Thunder absolutely hit on was Josh Giddey. Giddey really picked it up this last season as he averaged 16.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And if Giddey ends up being the 3rd best player on this roster behind the previously 2 mentioned players, then the Thunder are in a very good spot. Giddey is a unique player in the way he plays, as he's very patient and methodical when running the offense, and it clearly worked last season. I can only imagine he will be even better this next season in the same offense where he has now the option to pass to Chet. And teams will be so focused on Shea that Giddey could really open up his scoring as well. The Thunder also have Jalen Williams, who they drafted 12th overall last season. Williams has burst onto the scene as an immediate contributor for Oklahoma City. He fits seamlessly in both offensive and defensive systems and only stands to get better as time goes on. After working through a slow start last year due to injury, Williams essentially became the Thunder's third most used player, and the stats back it up, as he put up 14 points per game and 5 assists while shooting around 35% from 3. The Thunder have a ton of quality players aside from these 4, but really these 4 could prove to be enough. And while it really isn't the Thunder way, if they are competitive enough around the trade deadline, then they have more than enough picks to make some trades with and maybe add another star to this roster. But even if they don't add anyone else, we still have them finishing in the 4th spot.
This team was the outbreak team this year. The Kings in the season prior went 30-52 and shot up to the 3rd seed in the Western Conference, winning 18 more games. And what a fun surprise it was in so many aspects. Fans thought this team was going to be another meme team, especially after the franchise unveiled the beam, which they would ignite after every win. Well, they ignited that beam 48 times last season, which is definitely at least 18 more times than the fans expected. So, what helped this team so much, and why do we think they'll sit in the 3rd spot again? Let's start with the star player of this team, De'Aaron Fox. This guy is electric. 25 points per game, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds in his last season for the Kings. It really feels like Fox has started to make a name for himself and also in the process of polishing his game. He might just get the nickname of being Mr. Clutch because when it's late and you need a bucket, this guy is going to go and get it. He had 194 points in the clutch, and if you don't know what the clutch points are, it's when there's at least 5 or less minutes left in the game where the scoring margin is within 5 points. So when it's late and you need a bucket, Fox was the man to go to. This guy doesn't give up, and it's one of the other reasons this team was so good. 8 players on this team played in over 70 games. And if we compare that to a few other teams in this list, you'll see why that's so important. The Timberwolves only had 3 players, the Warriors had 4 players, and the Thunder had 5. Like I've been saying, in this series, being healthy and on the court matters more than anything. And despite all the talent on this team, it was really the chemistry and consistent playing time from so many of their players. The more you play together, the better your team will get, and it will help perfect the game of basketball you want to play on a nightly basis. So let's talk about the other important pieces on this roster. Domantas Sabonis is a great offensive player and meshes really well with some of the other players on this team. He averaged 19 points, 7 assists, and 12 rebounds last season. Another big man who can do just about anything you need him to. His defense is fine, it doesn't seem to be a glaring hole in his game, but there are definitely better defending centers in this league. Someone who meshed extremely well with Sabonis was Kevin Huerter. The plays him and Sabonis would run where he would shoot off the handoff while Sabonis screened was so deadly and ran so often in their games. Huerter averaged 15 points per game and his best yet in his career while shooting a very respectable 40% from deep. He's a solid fit at their 2 spot as a scoring guard. And then Keegan Murray, he had a fantastic rookie year for the Kings and was a key piece in their success. He shot 41% from 3 while averaging 12 points per game. He's just another player who can take another big step forward for the next season for this team. Harrison Barnes is a solid player for this team too, as he averaged 15 points and played and started in 82 games. He's solid all around and is one of the players who could benefit any team he goes to. The bench has solid role players as well, with Malik Monk, who can be a flamethrower off the bench, averaging 13.5 points and 4 assists per game. Some other notable pieces are Trey Lyles and Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell is a great perimeter defender. He's quick and agile and stays in front of his opponent extremely well. His scoring took a dip from 11.5 points to 5.6 points, but that's also because he's playing 10 less minutes a game, coming off the bench instead. The key factor in this team's success was their players' availability to be on the court on a nightly basis. Like I said, they had 8 players on their team who played in at least 70 games, which is so huge in terms of becoming a better team, as the more you play together, the better you'll become as a team. You learn the strengths and weaknesses of your own players, and you're able to work with or around those attributes. When you don't have to wonder who you have playing or starting every night, it helps the team in keeping a groove, and this team managed to do that, and it's why we believe they will reclaim their third spot in the Western Conference.
The penultimate spot in our prediction goes to the Phoenix Suns, and this team has a great chance to bring a championship to Arizona for the first time in the franchise's history. Right off the bat, they have one of the greatest scorers in NBA history in Kevin Durant. This man has career averages of 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. He's often considered the most talented player in the league, and he has the accolades to back that up. I mean, he's a 13-time All-Star, he's an MVP, and he's on the NBA's 75th anniversary team. So clearly, this man's got game. However, the biggest concern with Durant is he has struggled to stay healthy the last handful of seasons. It's unfortunate because before his Achilles tear, he was always playing 60-plus games, but after the injury, he has yet to hit that mark once. However, I don't think that will hurt the Suns too much, as they have recently acquired a ton of talent that will carry the load if he does happen to miss time. And if Durant is fully healthy by playoffs, the league better watch out. Devin Booker is also a huge part of this team, and he has really grown into his own. He is a very good offensive player, as he has scored 20-plus points per game every year since his rookie season. And his efficiency keeps rising, as he had a 55 efficient field goal percentage last season, and he put up a career-best 28 points per game. He also averaged 4.5 rebounds and 5.5 assists, so as a two-guard, he has a lot of point guard traits, and given how this team is currently structured, that's probably a good thing. Book probably benefited greatly from playing with Chris Paul the last few years, but with his departure, I have a few predictions. Devin Booker's scoring will probably drop off a little, and I think his assists will rise quite a bit, because after trading for Bradley Beal, the Suns don't really have a legitimate point guard on this roster, at least a starting caliber one. So it's likely Booker's turn to play a faux point guard role this year on a team with a ton of scoring options. I did just mention him, but Bradley Beal's definitely one of those scoring options and a huge addition to this team. I mean, you take a team that already has two 25-plus point per game scorers and add a legit star who averages 22 points per game over his entire career. And yes, it did come at the cost of proven point guard Chris Paul, but this was definitely a move that made the Suns better. Now, despite his offensive prowess, Beal isn't the greatest defender, nor is he historically known as a playmaker, but he can average around 5 assists. Now, one huge topic of conversation after this trade was it's a bunch of ball-dominant guys, but I don't really see that being a problem, as firstly, all these guys are professionals, and they have played with more ball-dominant players before. Durant spent a majority of his career with Westbrook, Devin Booker just played with Chris Paul, and Bradley Beal played with John Wall, so I think they will all mesh well, and I haven't even mentioned the fourth big-time part of this group. That is DeAndre Ayton. Ayton is a very solid center and will fit in well with these dominant scorers. He is a big body who rebounds well and can also stretch the floor, so he's not in their way. He runs the pick and roll well, and as long as his attitude doesn't act up, I can really see him helping this team make a push. He's also a good defender, which can help a ton in the West with all the dominant big men you can run into in any given playoff run.
I won't spend too long on this one because I think everyone should know by now that the Nuggets are the best team in the West. Last year, they absolutely dominated the West through playoffs, and the Heat were no match for them come finals. They have the best basketball player in the world on their team right now in Nikola Jokic. The only part of his game he doesn't have is crazy athleticism and maybe a bit lackluster on defense, but it literally doesn't matter when his offense is as insane as it is. Through the regular season last year, he averaged almost a triple-double through 69 games. 24.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists. It doesn't matter if you put your best defender on him because he's so good at finding teammates and getting easy buckets for them. But if someone is on him who isn't as good a defender, his post work is fantastic and he can score with ease. It's hard when there's a player this good because you have to play a team game to beat him. You can't just throw one guy on him and expect him to slow him down. Through the regular season last year, he was held to under double-digit scoring only 3 times. And in the games he had under 10 points, he still put up 9 assists or more in those games. So even when he's not scoring, he's getting his teammates to, and that's why it's so hard to deal with the Joker. Jamal Murray really put the world on notice. He's been hooping for the last couple of years, and especially in the bubble, he was a rock star. But he was playing his heart out again in the playoffs too. He averaged 20 points and 6 assists and shooting just under 40% from 3. He's a fantastic shot creator, but when he needs to, like in playoffs, he knows how to pass the ball. In the finals against Miami, he averaged 10 assists on top of his 21 points per. And the reason why this team was so good is because they didn't load this team with superstars. This team has 2 star players, and the rest of the roster was filled out with players who fit their star players' play styles, something that is usually the case in most NBA championships. Aaron Gordon was the perfect 4 on this team, to Jokic being a great backdoor cutter and lob threat, and a guy like the Joker who can bring guys out of the paint made it really easy for Gordon to get easy buckets down low. Michael Porter Jr. is an absolute marksman. This guy has never seen a shot he didn't like. He averaged 17 points on 41% from deep. This team all around was put together perfectly. Bruce Brown was a pretty important piece that left in free agency, even though it seemed like he wasn't supposed to go anywhere. He left to join Indiana this offseason, but realistically, this was the only real loss to the team, and I think that his presence won't be missed too much. They have plenty of players that can fill out the rest of the roster with KCP, Reggie Jackson, and even Christian Braun. This team was built to suit their 2 stars on the team, and it worked out fantastically. And as long as the Joker is on the floor, this team will be winning games, and we truly believe it will be hard to top this team again going the next year. So the Denver Nuggets are in the 1 spot in the Western Conference.